We're gonna be watching some videos, and I'm been very late to this stream, but it doesn't really matter. I'm a new streamer. Don't No one cares. So, are they the same thing? In terms of like the WoW's Jailer and Final Fantasy 14's Endsinger. This is from Jesse Cox. Honestly, I think the main, I've said it, but I'll say it again. Main difference is that the Jailer, they try to make you care about a character that was meant nothing to you, versus what they should have done, which is try to make you care about like the characters you run into that have passed away, in Warcraft's history. Because it's not like it's one or two; it's like quite a few. So, and then Endsinger, like that's pretty much what they do. Like I didn't give a damn about Endsinger, but it felt a lot more satisfying at the end of the expansion versus Jailers, or Shadowlands.
Hey everyone, it's been a year since Endwalker came out, and the newest World of Warcraft expansion.
Yeah, I mean there's spoilers, but if you actually cared about the story, you would have seen it by now. So I don't. You can say spoilers, but honestly, I don't care.
Is here, so I shouldn't have to say spoiler warning, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The following video contains some pretty big spoilers for Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker and World of Warcraft Shadowlands, because this video is about the final bosses of these expansions and how on paper they appear to be the exact same thing. I'm sure some of you are aware of that Final Fantasy XIV versus World
On paper, they seem to be the same thing.
of Warcraft video.
Not really. Also, because Jailer was like claiming credit for literally everything. This dude was like, it's all me. I've done everything. While the Endsinger was just like, I am the catalyst for everything. I was the start of it all. But obviously, nothing to do with almost anything after.
Video I made last year, and as a fan of both WoW and FF14, for, to be honest, entirely different reasons, I still find myself comparing the two from time to time, what one does well.
Well, yeah, they're both like popular MMOs
compared to
that you play. Going to be a no-brainer. You're going to compare them
to the other and vice versa. And if you've ever seen a stream or let's play of mine, you know I am a fan of tropes. I love them. I love being able to see them coming from a mile away. It's honestly how I end up guessing the plot to most of the things I play, and it's why I love a good mystery. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, a trope is a common convention in a particular medium.
I mean, it's a common convention pretty much in any medium, not particular, because they can be cross mediums. And I think most people like them because they're like comfort food of storytelling.
Something used enough to be recognized as that thing. Storytelling uses tropes all the time, and these two games love their tropes. Things like the enemy of my enemy trope, the tragic villain trope, the magic is a monster magnet trope.
The magic is a monster magic. That, honestly, the trope is a little more vaguer than that. Usually it's this object or this power, this person, whatever it may be, is a monster magnet. Something is a monster magnet trope.
Or one of my favorites, the chivalrous pervert trope.
I'll be honest, that's one of my least favorites. Just because it's, I don't know, kind of dumb. I mean, I get it, but it's just not my cup of tea.
All of these are examples of tropes, and there are so many tropes. And yeah, I enjoy some more than others. One of the ones I've never been a fan of, but MMOs love to do,
that was a bad image from Guild Wars 2. Who the heck is this?
Is the true final boss, or man behind the man, or greater scope villain trope. All of which can really just be summed up like this. You arrive at the final boss of a video game, and as you do a battle, they say something along the lines of like, "You fools, all this evil stuff I've been doing is actually to prevent something much worse from happening, and that worst guy, you don't even know him yet, but he's terrible." And then, depending on the scope of the game, the guy either shows up right then as the form of something totally insane, or in the case of most MMORPGs, they become the focus of the next expansion.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big problems with that is if they aren't a boss immediate to you, like that you can kind of care about, especially if they come out and kill the previous boss and now they're the new boss, like a second phase kind of thing. That's pretty cool. But when it's like, oh, they're the new boss of the expansion, it's a lot of forced, like they're going to try their best to force you to care about this character.
I think it's...
And no one likes Like, it's the same with like almost anything. Like, no one likes things being forced on them. So
It's safe to say we've all seen this before, and it drives me crazy, because I've always thought it just seems like they were kicking the narrative can down the road. But I will admit, it is a great and easy hook to get people invested on what's to come next. But with that said, it can get very stale very quick, which is why I'm very much over it. So when both Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft Shadowlands release expansions where the villain we start chasing at the beginning turns out not to be the final boss of the expansion, but instead is that other even worse thing. In this case, the Endsinger and the Jailer.
I mean, we kind of knew with Sylvanas that there was already, like, prior to Shadowlands, that there was someone behind her, right? If I remember right. So it's like, it's not really a big deal, at least in my opinion. So
two characters that we know nothing about. We're about to enter a game where we have zero connection to the villain, and even worse, don't really know or care about their motivations. And yes, that was the case with Shadow.
that's the case with almost any expansion, though. Just whether they're like the person behind them, like previous person, like, or if they're someone completely new, like their own villain. You don't know anything about them when you're starting out, so.
Shadowlands. So then how the hell did Final Fantasy XIV make it work?
They didn't. Not in a way. Well, they made the story work. The trope itself, they didn't resolve it. Like, no one really cares about the Endsinger, at least that I know of. I personally couldn't give a damn about them. Like, Xenos being a part of it was cool, but like, literally doesn't matter.
Well, let's start with the baseline of Shadowlands. When you look at what they're trying to do, it seems like a creative outing. Just the very concept of setting your expansion in the afterlife is a pretty huge undertaking. And going into the expansion, we're dealing with an enemy who's undead, Sylvanas, spent the previous expansion.
So the undertaking part, I don't know if I agree. It's not really that big of an undertaking. Because it's not like you have to include every dead person that's ever died in WoW. You just gotta include, like, the main ones. Like the, what was it, Tyrion? Bordring? Or whatever. Like, people like that. Am I thinking Tyrion? The dude who had the Ashbringer originally. Whose son killed him. Wograin? Maybe that's who I'm thinking of. But, yeah, I mean, that's Uther. Like, just have the characters that were really a big part of the WoW's lore. Just have random NPCs like you do everywhere else. So
Murdering her way through Azeroth and pissing everyone off, except you Undercity fans, I see you. As the story progressed, it was very clear something more was going on. There was something happening behind the scenes. She had a dark master, but she still claimed that she was doing her evil deeds.
see, that's what I mean. Like, she had a dark master. Like, everyone knew this prior to Shadowlands,
For a reason. And in the run-up to
which I think is also what like annoyed a lot of people.
Shadowlands, it was revealed
Because, like, she could have served under Arthas, but she didn't want to, because she saw him as, like, evil. So she's like, no, I'd literally would rather just perish. Because if I remember right in the lore, she thought she was going to die by resisting Arthas, and she did it anyways, but she still survived it. So it's like, why they didn't really focus on that? Like, I don't know. Like, I really think they should have made Sylvanas, like, pretend to be on Jailer's side just to get him out in the open so that the champions could take care of him. He was probably like, he was hidden, and if things stayed as is, who knows how long, like, his plans would keep going for. Because it doesn't make sense that she would serve him, because it's not like she has, like, the ruins like Arthas did with the Death Knight stuff. So it's like, I don't know. I think they did it really poorly.
her dark master was the Jailer.
Especially since this is one of, like, the first things people saw of the Jailer. It's like, why'd you give him freaking half naked dude? Like, he should have been wearing armor. Like, what the heck? Or a cloak. Something.
Obviously, from my perspective, I think the entire thing ended up being a big failure. In an effort to have diverse zones and new characters, we spent a lot of time focusing on stuff that I didn't feel was all that important.
It doesn't matter. That's the case with most things. Most of it's not going to be important. it's going to lead you to the important stuff. Like even Final Fantasy did this. So I don't know why he's bringing that up as if WoW did it differently. Final Fantasy, a lot of the like getting to the villains didn't really matter. Like maybe in like questy, like we need you to do something so you can get experience matter, but not really.
There didn't really seem to be a lot of cohesion between the zones, except for the Game of Thrones level politics happening between the leaders.
The Game of Thrones parts I really didn't like. I don't mind that things don't have cohesion between zones, mainly because they weren't really supposed to, from what I get. Like you have, like each one has specific designs on what they should be doing. So to me, it made sense that they wouldn't really mesh too well together. But at the same time, it's like, it's fine as long as they're cool. Like Raven Draft, one of my favorite zones. Arden Wheel was pretty good too. The other one's not so good. But yeah, I just didn't like that, the Game of Thrones stuff. Like, because WoW was not, I don't know, the writers really weren't equipped to handle Game of Thrones level stuff.
And the stuff I did want to see more of and hopefully get answers to really wasn't delivered. I figured this expansion would give us a lot of Sylvanas' story, maybe even explain why everyone kept telling us that she was morally gray, but we didn't really get any of that. And by the time her story wrapped up, we didn't even get to see a reunion between her and Nathanos, right? Because the story quickly had to move on to explaining what the hell her boss was up to. A man who at that point in the story you've seen being evil in a few cutscenes, but is really still shrouded in mystery. We kind of know what he wants to do, but we don't know why. We don't know what his end goal is. It's really the quintessential problem with the true final boss or man behind the man trope. We're told.
What I also don't like with Warcraft's way of doing it is the jailer looks super evil. It's like he doesn't look morally great. He doesn't look like he wants to help people. He just really, really looks like insanely evil. Like more evil than even like fell like demons. So it's like, for him to say, I was doing this all for you, this was to save creation, it's like, you would think you'd look at least a little less evil if that's really your goal, considering you probably made that armor yourself, you designed it. But you went with like the most evil aesthetic as freaking possible.
Told by people we just met, who we're told are important, to go kill this guy because it's for the greater good. And that is pretty much what we do. We're still never really told why he's doing any of the things he's doing, but we know that he's going to rewrite reality, and it's our job to stop him. Once he's defeated, we're shown a very quick and pretty flimsy explanation of why he did what he did. But at that point, honestly, it's way too late. Apparently, he was once the arbiter of the afterlife and decided the first one's creations were defective and unable to
That part didn't really make a lot of sense to me, because it's like, isn't the arbiter or whoever, like at least the new one is like more computer than individual? Well, maybe was the issue, was that he wasn't. And to say the creators' creations were flawed, it's like, aren't they also them? I don't think they're part of the creators, right? I could be wrong, but I don't know. I stopped caring about the story pretty early on in Shadowlands.
Stand the, yeah, you got it, greater scope villain to come. Yeah, that's right. The one true final boss who we've come to learn has orchestrated everything since the beginning of us playing. It's actually revealed.
Also, it doesn't make sense that they were able to do that to him, but like, even though all four of them ganged up on him, I'm assuming they're all around the same power level at that time, he was still able to influence things to that degree to literally change like everything. Kind of dumb.
That
I really hate that trope. Divinity did that. I forget which Divinity game. It's a 3D action game though. Not Original Sin, or it could be that. I don't remember which one exactly. But they did that where this whisper, turns out it was a bad person who had been sealed. And it's like, how are they talking to me literally from like a seal made by a god? Like, it just didn't really make sense.
That there is another something that's even worse than he is, and it's coming. And he was trying to be prepared for it, I guess. And now you, the player, have to stick around to the next expansion, I assume, in order to find out more.
But yeah, that still, like, I think one of the reasons why the story doesn't really mesh too well is because the Champions of Azeroth have taken down every single enemy that they've run into. So for him to say we're not prepared, it's like, oh, okay. Doesn't really follow the track record so far.
So yeah, that sucked, and it still sucks saying it out loud again. But it should at least be understandable why it's...
Like, I think it would have made more sense if like he was behind the mask, but it wasn't a case of him trying to kill everyone or gain power. He was just trying to test the champions. And each test they pass was just more further proof that, okay, you guys have made it. And this him coming into play was just the final test. Like, okay, you guys are now ready to face what is to come. And all that good, like, stuff like that. Like, something like that would make more sense to me.
It sucks now. There was nothing at stake for the player. Sure, you're told there was, but I don't know anyone who found the jailer fight resonate with them on an emotional level other than, oh look, new loot. So then let's bring it back.
Also, him turning into a weird golem is just dumb.
And ask again, how on earth could this increasingly lame trope end up so differently in Final Fantasy XIV? Well, before we even start, Final Fantasy XIV is a story-heavy game, unlike WoW. So the onus is on the 14 dev team to make this trope work. They've got more real estate in their game for storytelling, but still, it's not an easy trope to make good. So let's start with the previous expansion. Just like Battle for Azeroth, the story beats were being set up in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. In it, the villain mentions that the reasoning for all their schemes was that, long ago, their people were killed in a great calamity.
Yep. The thing, though, with this is, that's been there since, like, almost the beginning of Final Fantasy. Anytime they... Like, their story's been there. Like, it's not like they pulled it out of nowhere. Like, the jailer feels like it literally was someone at Blizzard just came up with the idea randomly. And I think that was the case, if I'm not mistaken. But that's what I mean. Like, it wasn't part of, like, the overall arcane story that was always there, meant to be. So it had a lot to build up on. It's also a case where Final Fantasy didn't really do you wrong with the existing characters to introduce this new character. While Jailer did, like, a bunch of people's favorite character, Sylvanas, wrong, just to make him seem himself more important, which is a huge flaw with the writing team. So,
And the cause was this mysterious song or sound from space. It warped their world, killed countless people, and only by creating their dark deity Zodiark, the same Zodiark we've been trying to fight since the beginning, could they stop this mysterious song.
That's not true. At least from my memory of it, you're not trying to fight Zodiark. You're trying to fight the people trying to free him. Like, he himself does not ever come into play. It's all his... Not even his minions. It's just the Asians or whatever they're called. And from what I understand, they really... It's because while he's sealed, the people who were sacrificed to make him are also sealed? I could be wrong on that. Oh, no, it was, I think Heidelin, who was made... Because, yeah, they made him to counter the song that was destroying their planet. But obviously he's an evil god, so can't really let him run free. So then you had a resistance group that made the light god, who could, counter him. The only problem is Hyland had to, like, literally break reality to counter him. Like, that's why there's a bunch of timelines in Final Fantasy. I'm pretty sure this is the case. I could be wrong. But because of that, because she had to break them, or break reality, is the original ancient ones, or whatever they're called, they also broke and became weaker versions. That's why the normal people just aren't, like, super strong like the ancient ones were.
But, it's
like that Jet Li movie, the one where he has to kill his copies to become stronger.
still kind of an amorphous concept, a weird footnote that is really not delved into. And like Shadowlands, the plot of Endwalker is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you keep the end of Shadowbringers vague enough, it does kind of sound like BFA as well. The secret behind-the-scenes evil corrupting our world from the beginning has finally been defeated. The last villain, the one who's been in front of our face the...
Yeah, who was that in Shadowlands, though? No one's been defeated. Like, they didn't defeat someone and then find out there was a person behind them. Right? That I know of? not Sylvanas. We've been knowing about that. And Sylvanas wasn't really considered an enemy, like a true enemy. At least not to the Horde. Until she like betrayed him to go follow the jailer.
The entire time, who is essentially at this point our arch nemesis, has gone forth to create a battleground for one last epic showdown. And so even knowing it's a trap, we march forth into the unknown, and there the expansion begins. And for Final Fantasy XIV, instead of Sylvanas, it's Xenos. And we're all like, this asshole's gonna go merge with Zodiark and become some final villain. It seemed like a pretty easy theory craft.
I think another reason why Xenos works better than Sylvanas is Xenos was an asshole from the get-go. He was never, like, pretending to be a good guy. Ever. Like, he didn't care about his own troops. Literally, the only thing he cared about was a good fight. So.
But when we, the player, finally stand face to face with Zodiark, everyone playing was asking the exact same question. Hold up, why are we doing this at level 83? We're not even halfway through the expansion. That's right, the game pulls the old switcheroo on you.
I honestly thought it was a case where you would fight them and then they would run away somehow, like teleport, whatever it is, trope they use. Because he was unfinished, and like maybe the Asians would come in, help him escape so that he could finish whatever. Because he looks like he's barely like waking up.
Yeah, and the big final boss we've been promised for 10 years is defeated. Oh, but remember that little tidbit about Zodiark being the thing that stopped the mysterious song? Well, it's back. And
well, yeah, that's been a part of the story for like at least 3 expansions.
So early in the expansion, the story completely shifts its focus to stopping this mysterious force we've never met before and honestly have never really cared about. And this is when...
And that's still the case. Like, I still don't really care about the Endsinger.
And the Final Fantasy XIV team spends the next 20 hours of gameplay showing you why you should care.
Not care about the enemy, but care about what's happening. Which I don't think they really needed to do, but...
Sure, I mean, they take us to new places.
Because it definitely helps with the, because the thing with Final Fantasy and the 20 hours he's talking about, that 20 hours has, like, very little to do with the Endsinger. Maybe less than an hour. While most of it is about the world, your friends in the world, and your character.
We meet new characters, but the focus is returning to the places we know and love. The world you, the player, have been defending for a main game and 4 expansions is literally on fire. The same chaos that swallowed the world in the past is happening again. Except instead of just being told it happened, you're now seeing it happen in real time.
Yeah. I mean, Warcraft, I think, does the same. Like, they actually show you. So I don't think that's much of a, oh, Final Fantasy did this right, well, WoW did it wrong kind of trope thing. But, I mean, they really hammered it home.
Real time. People are dying, cities are burning, and those people who still live are wailing with despair to the point where they turn into literal monsters.
Yeah, that part didn't really make sense to me. Because from what I understand in the story, that was never a thing that you could get so depressed you become a monster. Like, that is weird, but it's cool. So most players just don't care.
Then kill more and cause more destruction, and then in turn create more monsters. It's absolutely terrible. But it isn't just the stakes we're shown. We're also shown why it's all happening to begin with. Our old enemies, the Asians, which have been a thorn in our side from the beginning, long ago in the before times when they were known as the Ancients, beings of unlimited and unparalleled power, it was, unbeknownst to any of them, one of their own that set all of this in motion.
It's also a case where they weren't unlimited in power. Because that's how a lot of their hierarchy was decided, if I remember right. Like Emmett Shoke, like he was one of the top people because he could control like an insane amount of mana compared to his fellows.
You know, without getting way too into it, and there is a lot, imagine if you had unlimited power, lived forever, and every single thing you ever wanted, you could just will into being. It was a perfect utopia. But just like when you see a rich dude who's also really depressed, having it all...
I don't think that was the case, right? Like, a lot of them weren't really depressed. It's just they had lived so long and done the same job for so long that they would just get pretty much bored of it and go do, like, retire or do something else. Well, I mean, this guy who is the like kind of the man behind the mask, like technically he is the final boss because he started it all. Was his thing wasn't that he got bored or jaded or anything like that. His thing was that he just seemed to be the only person among his race that actually cared about the creatures they created. Like, because they would be like game developers and see them almost as like NPCs, to where it's like, okay, this game isn't working well. Let's, trash it, kill everything, and, start anew if it wasn't going the way that they expected. Um, but since he saw them as actual creatures, like actual living creatures, it would really mess him up.
Doesn't mean that you're happy. And one ancient felt this very way. As he slipped further into depression, he decided to create a multiplicity of messengers, his little birds to
Yep, but it had nothing to do with him being like immortal and strong. Like, well, maybe the immortal part a little, just because he lived like longer while feeling like crap. So.
fly across the stars in search of hope. Surely, out there, somewhere amongst the stars, was his answer. Surely someone had found,
which I never thought was like any kind of decent plot, like storytelling. Because it doesn't make sense why he didn't go, unless there was something that stops them from leaving their planet. That could be it, but I couldn't. I don't remember any of that part of it, so. So if there isn't, it makes no sense why he didn't just up and leave to search for it himself.
Found a reason for him to keep going. And his little birds, these childlike beings of wonder, were designed specifically with emotionality in mind. And in their mind, their whole objective was just to come back with some good news for Dad. And so these little bird children, made of pure emotion, venture off into the stars in order to find hope for a man who has none and run directly into the Fermi paradox. Now, if you don't know what the Fermi paradox is, I'm not going to deep dive it for you. Just go Google it. It's fascinating. But the general gist is, if the universe is...
Honestly, I didn't really read much of it. I think I saw like a bullet point of it. I could be wrong though, but I think it's a case where, like, if the universe is as big as we think it is, we should have found life by now. And because we haven't, it means that life is... like there's a wall of some kind that is killing off life. And humanity is just on a when we get destroyed kind of thing. Or we're like the first. So that's why we see no life, is that we're just the first ones kind of thing. So I don't know how I feel about that. That's the thing, but yeah. I'm gonna take a small break here because I got to use the restroom. So I'll be back. Okay. So let's see. Where were we? Oh yeah.
very, very old, and there are countless galaxies, and in those countless galaxies, countless worlds, then we most certainly would have seen some alien civilization. So why don't we? And the philosophical, scientific theory crafting begins from there. Trust me, read up on it. It falls directly into the existential dread category, and Final Fantasy XIV doesn't shy away from this. Yes, his creations do discover there's life out there, but the answer to the question of, is there hope for me out there? The answer isn't one that he's gonna like. Every single world and civilization, no matter how big or small or powerful or collapsing or polluted or whatever, every single one was engulfed by hopelessness and despair. And realizing that there is no external hope or joy for their creator to bring back to him.
That's also a case where, like, just mathematically, that is a super low chance of happening, where there's all these worlds, none of them are in their Eden like phase, where it's just like everything's just good. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
They come to the conclusion that this is the fate of all living beings in the universe. Even the universe itself in time will come to a dark, sad end. And so they join together for one final song to end suffering and despair and to grant one final kindness, oblivion.
That also, it's like, man, I think they're were affected. I don't know if that is the case. I can't remember exactly how that story, that sounds about right. But at the same time, I think it was more that because they're emotional creatures, like that is they're basically constructed from emotion. All the despair they ran into basically while out searching was just like infecting them, like turning them darker and darker. Like when you drop like oil into water, like it's just, I don't know if oil is a good analogy there, but like food coloring. Like if you put black into water, eventually you put enough, the water's going to turn completely black. And I think that's more what happened than them saying, well, we can't find any hope, so I think it's better for our dad if everything died. Because at that point, it's like, well, if they had this power to combine and become this super like entity that could literally sing things to death from like eons from like light years away, then why didn't they combine and like sing hope instead? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes more sense that they were tainted by the depression and darkness of the universe and ended up leaning towards that.
Like I said, it gets dark. And I'm sure by now you're like, okay, Jesse, I get it. So the difference is essentially you're fighting the concept of death in Warcraft and the concept of despair in Final Fantasy XIV.
You're not even really fighting the concept of death in Warcraft. It just happens that that is where you're at. With Warcraft, I think you're more fighting the concept of imperfection versus or what is perceived perfection. Like, that is what the jailer believes, is that we're imperfect, therefore we cannot fight whatever's to come. So he's going to recreate it to actually be perfect. But it's not really death. I mean, obviously it's going to kill everyone, but that's like saying every villain is about the death just because they want to kill everyone.
And the reason 14 works so well is because you gave a detailed backstory, and it makes it hit home why it's important.
Not really. At least for me, I still don't really care about the Endsinger. Because, like, I know a little bit about them now. Great. I don't care. Like, even though I don't like Xenos, like, I still care about him more than freaking Endsinger. So I don't know.
And you would be totally wrong. Because the reason 14 is better has nothing to do with the backstory of the villain. Your character has spent numerous expansions facing hopeless situation after hopeless situation, always emerging victorious. It's a theme of the game that you aren't just a mere adventurer anymore. You're a beacon of hope that lights the way for others.
That's what I was talking about with WoW. Like, the fact that he said, oh, you guys aren't ready. It's like, it would have made more sense if he was throwing these challenges at us, making sure we could pass them. Then he would be the final challenge and say, okay, you guys are ready for what's to come. And, like, I don't know, gives us a parting gift of making like a creation for a new city or something like that. I don't know, like, just, they could have done almost anything at the end, but just be like, turns out the jailer was just like the one who was just trying to like force us to rise above our current power.
Your actions, even the smallest of kindnesses, inspire others to be better. And now you're probably like, okay, so there's a lot of emotional resonance that connects this expansion back to older expansions. But even that's not the complete answer.
It's the most complete answer, I would say. That's the majority of it.
Because the real reason this boss works is something I think the developers picked up on early in telling this story. Creating a moment like this to end a 10-year story arc in an MMORPG where everyone's experience is a little bit different, the only way to deliver that boss fight is to, 1, acknowledge this journey was never about the character. It was about you, the player.
That's not true. Because anything you do outside of the player or the character itself, like its story, has absolutely no meaning in the ending.
Who's going through your own shit, and your own struggles, and the entire expansion is an acknowledgement that despite any despair in your...
I mean, that's not really the player, though, because what if you didn't have any struggles or anything like that? You know what I mean? Like, what about that person? I mean, it's probably not uncommon, but I don't know. Like, it just seems weird that he thinks this is about the player. Maybe he went through some really rough stuff and this resonated him, like, on a personal level. But for me, I don't know, didn't really.
In your own life, you're still here. And 2, Fan service. Lots of fan service.
That should be number one. That other one should be like 10th or something like that. But the fan service, like if WoW did that, like most people would have loved Shadowlands. If they really went into like the Arthas, like being a part of the main story in a good way. Sylvanas, like maybe finally realizing that the jailer was very similar to how Arthas was when she was first resurrected. Maybe seeing all the dead souls of like from when she burned down the tree, like stuff like that, like actual character development would have been way better.
So put together, what does that mean? Well, it's another trope, but honestly, it's one of my favorites. The game reminds you that everything you've done up until now has mattered, and every person you've met, just like in real life, walks away with an impression of you. And in this game, you leave a great impression, because as the final day approaches, the people of the world unite behind you, friends and former enemies, to help rocket you to the stars. Hell, even the prime.
Yeah, but that's still what I was saying. Like, you notice like his number one was like maybe 15-30 seconds long. This one's like several minutes. Yeah, because this is the main reason.
The very gods you've gone up against countless times offer themselves.
And I'm not saying that's for everyone. Obviously, if you were going through a lot of stuff and this helped you through it because of the, innate nature of the story, which is like fighting against depression, just survive, you know what I mean? Like pushing against that, what seems to be, and like this pressure that it just is never ending. Like, of course, that's going to be more important to you, but I think for a majority, this is the more important part.
Up to power your ship to the stars. And don't even get me started on the final zone. It is designed to make you cry.
I didn't like the final zone. I know I'm like alone in that, most likely, but man, I didn't really care.
Tribute to all who have given so much to help your character get there. Their voices cheering you on to the end. So it should come as no surprise that when you stand there, 1v1, facing the Endsinger, you're interrupted by your arch nemesis, a character you've been battling for some time now who just wants one final throwdown with you. And there he is, totally confused as to how on earth this thing is still alive.
I take it this is your prey.
Does it say why he's a monster? I can't remember. I just thought it was cool and didn't even question it.
But why does it still live? Surely it is no match for you. I assumed you would be above something so banal as despair.
He sees this fight for what it is. Nothing that can stop you.
To be fair, Xenos just would see that no matter who the enemy was, just because Xenos thinks you are the only endgame for him, therefore the only endgame for you should be Xenos. So I think he would have had that reaction to almost anything.
So come, let us dispense with this distraction, you and I.
And so we ride into the final boss fight on the back of our arch nemesis to a medley of previous final boss music. The final encounter of Endwalker.
It was freaking awesome. I don't care about the Endsinger. Honestly, you could have replaced that avatar with almost anything. Still a great fight.
Isn't about the boss. It's about you. The road that you've walked.
Also, I think Endsinger looks cooler than the Jailer. The Jailer, rather, like with all his armor and does look pretty cool, but they never really showed the Endsinger like looking dumb with like naked and having his nipples showing for some reason.
Hours and hours you, the player, have put into the game. The musical medley is a reminder of that. But like any good final boss fight, there's a second phase. But this isn't their second phase. The Endsinger thinks they killed us. This is our second phase. And the boss music is our theme song. Yes, it is literally a power of friendship moment, and honestly, it's perfect.
Yep.
And just like when you play a boss for the first time and don't know the mechanics and suddenly they gain all their life back, the Endsinger goes from strategic attacks and throwing planets at you, to now wildly flailing in order to prevent the light from engulfing it. Because despite knowing that the Endsinger may be correct, that in the end we all fade away, you never lose hope. The Final Fantasy XIV writers saw what they had to do, make this trope about another big bad who's way worse out there, and not only did they set out to deliver a backstory, but they also made it clear that that part wasn't even all that important.
Well, the backstory, yeah, like, it's not like there was a lot of backstory. It's literally something that could be told in like a minute or two.
Because the real story...
Which is also, like, technically the jailer has a backstory. He was the arbiter. He thought creation was flawed. He was jailed for that thought, I guess, because he got canceled. And so he got mad, decided to cancel everyone else, and just recreate reality to his, like... Man, that sounds like some crazy, like, leftist or right. That doesn't really matter what, like, side you're on. Like, where you want to get rid of all opposing voices and just have your universe.
Is acknowledging where you started, where you've been, and those...
The fan service that he was talking about, like, that's literally it. Like, Shadowlands, if they leaned way more into that, like Final Fantasy did, because Final Fantasy, even if you took their Endsinger's backstory and all that, like, it still doesn't really matter. It was the fan service that got a lot of people, or at least me. I shouldn't say a lot of people, but I don't know. I felt like they way focused more on the fan service aspect of it.
You've met along the way. The good, the bad, all of it. Not just in a video game, but in your life. And that shit is universally beautiful.
Like he says life, like, I really think he may have gone through something during that time. Which I get it if you did, like, and you play this game around that time, well, it's really going to hit you different. For me, didn't really matter. Not that I have like a perfect life or anything, but I didn't lose anyone, so.
And so we circle back to World of Warcraft, which seems lacking in comparison. But because of who I am, you know I can't just let it sit at that. I have some ideas of how I would have changed Shadowlands. And trust me when I say I've thought about this. It's not even that complicated. I don't have to change the theme or even the overall structure of the expansion. Shadowlands could have been roughly the same, except the focus always should have been on fan service. Just like...
So what I just said, like, it has nothing to do with that, like, fighting depression thing that made it good. It was this fan service.
A quick social experiment, if you'll allow me. You've died or taken a weird portal, you're in the afterlife. Is your priority going to be deep diving the political infighting and machinations of various factions, or would you go find a lost friend or family member? Maybe plan a lunch date with a dead celebrity you always admired? Why they thought anyone would give a damn about the truly unimportant characters that manage the afterlife.
Well, there's nothing wrong with introducing them, having a role. I think the problem is that they should have been side characters, while the old characters should have been the main characters.
Focus of the expansion from the beginning should have been about giving a send-off to the characters players both loved and hated for the last 15 or 20 years. Just giving the players that little bit of closure on just a few storylines would allow them to finally work in all those other characters that have to sit on the sidelines for every other expansion. Also wrapping up plot points like, oh, I don't know, the giant sword.
I mean, how are you going to do that with Shadowlands? It has nothing to do with it. It's freaking Burning Legion.
Or the fact that everyone's favorite Draenei is now a literal genocidal maniac.
That came out of nowhere. I have no idea where they were going with that one. I'm assuming they're trying to paint it as the light breeds, like cultism, like fanaticism. But it's like they already have the void for that. So it's like, I really don't get it.
So like I was saying, we don't even have to really change that much. We can work with the...
That, or like their thought on that one was like the void and the light are just like the same side of the, you know, different sides of the same coin. Like whether it's the light or the void, they're all about just consuming everything to be them.
The zones we were given. The plot of Bastion should have been about Arthas, Uther, and Jaina coming together and...
Which, if I think about it now, it's like, why can't the light ever combat the void when it comes to like infecting something? Like when something's been infected by the void, they're usually like done. Like that, they can't come back from that.
Forgiving each other. Maldraxxus should have given us...
Oh, let me hear what he said there, because I think I agree with him.
Forgiving each other. Uther and jumping up plot points like, oh, I don't know, the giant sword, or the fact that everyone's favorite Draenei is now a literal genocidal maniac.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, we don't even have to really change that much. We can work with the zones we were given. The plot of Bastion should have been about Arthas, Uther, and Jaina.
Yes. Actually, I think Anduin may have been a little bit better. I don't know why Arthas... I think Kid Arthas should have been here.
Coming together and forgiving each other.
Because if I remember right, Arthas had to, like, separate himself or something like that, if I remember right. I could be wrong.
Maldraxxus should have given us some amazing send-offs to heroes that we've known throughout the series, like Saurfang maybe meeting his son in the afterlife, Bane and Cairn getting closure. Hell,
Exactly. Like, completely agree.
a group of them could have teamed up in that zone, and then it would have made the scene later.
Why is Anduin there?
Where Anduin breaks free, all that much more special, and then waiting for him
Oh,
there
I see
with
what
his
you're saying.
father. That's such a good emotional moment. All the support in his life helping him through
Yeah, I don't know why the orc was there. Should have just been his dad.
that moment. Come on. Revendreth would have been about the villains we fought and potentially seeing another side to them. Maybe underneath all that hatred and anger and rage, there's some good in them.
Wait, Illidan's dead? Pretty sure Illidan's alive. Did he die and I just didn't know? Oh man, it's gonna bother me. I'm gonna look that up. But yeah, Arthas when he was a Lich King. Gul'dan, let's be fair, Gul'dan was an asshole, worse than Garrosh. And then you have Deathwing. Deathwing I would really like if they went into his story.
There's some good in them. Except Garrosh, who is still an unforgivable giant piece of shit.
And Garrosh, it's weird because it's like, you would think they would torture Garrosh with like his past, like with his mom, because he was like freaking huge pussy. Like, let's be fair. When you first meet Garrosh, the dude's a freaking loser.
But then seeing all these other people change, maybe even Arthas can be your guide through this area, add some even more weight to his character and his unwillingness to budge. And then Ardenweald, I honestly think what they have in the game already is pretty good, close to what I would have done, but it would have been entirely about Tyrande coming to grips with her failure and the people that she lost forgiving her. We keep the dragon plot stuff and we use that as a through line for the next expansion.
Yeah, I think they did Ysera's part of it pretty well. Though I don't like that she died to begin with, but you know, they're gonna kill her. I think that was a pretty cool way they continued the story for her. Tyrande coming to grips with her failure. Yeah, but I think it should have been Tyrande and Sylvanas. Sylvanas coming to grips with what she had done, while Tyrande coming to grips with the fact that she failed her people.
Expansion. Now, why did we do all this, Jesse, you may ask? Well, it all comes together in the final fight, where, again, because who gives a damn about the jailer, this moment is for you, the player. This guy thinks he's some unstoppable evil that's gonna wipe out reality, but you are the champion of Azeroth. And this time, you brought your friends. Yes, I am 100% stealing from Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do this, honestly. No one really... Like, the whole friendship thing is... It's whatever, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think going through, like, the main story and quest and running into them, and even in the raid, maybe them being there to do some stuff here and there, would have just been perfectly fine.
14, but some
They didn't have to play, like, a major role.
of WoW's best stuff is stolen from other games. So as you're battling the jailer with your raid, imagine it looks
Yeah, I think WoW did a better job. I've mentioned it before with the dragon. Right?
like he's gonna wipe you,
Then
and
Goebbels.
then the music swells, and from the sides, Jaina and Arthas and Uther appear. But wait, that's not all. Tyrande and the countless wisps of Teldrassil descend from above.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that, but with like Sylvanas, like seeing all of them, seeing all the elves that she had killed.
All the warriors of the past, we're talking your favorite characters from
Who
the
the heck is
beginning.
this?
They're coming through.
Is that Garrosh's dad? Hellscream? Like that would be cool too. Is that if like Garrosh's dad, like he runs into him and his dad's like disappointed with them, with the fact that he went all like orcs or nothing, like everyone else can die. Basically like a huge racist.
through portals like it's endgame, and just for good measure, Garrosh, who has been a dick through the entire expansion, who probably, in my version, would have been the final boss of a raid or a dungeon, he comes through like no one's gonna end reality unless it's me, you son of a bitch.
It's kind of dumb. I mean, it would have been funny, but I think it would have been more interesting to have, like, instead of being part of, like, the final fight, I really don't think he should have been. Should have been, like, a dungeon where Garrosh, you see him trying to go through, like, his family matters, like his dad, his mom, and stuff like that. Because let's be fair, that's what he really cared about. And since they died, he kind of went crazy. It was all about, like, Horde number 1. So I think that would have been more interesting.
Can you even imagine how hyped this fight would be? And that's not even a detailed version, that's just an idea. But that moment alone would have the fanbase hyped for countless expansions to come, because the payoff for caring was there. And it all comes back to that, really, acknowledging the people who play your game, especially in MMORPG, are your game. Without them, the world dies.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with the other players. Like, what is he talking about?
It's okay to give your players something every now and again that says,
Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay. I mean, yeah, the fan service. Like, fan service is huge. Like, they really should have. And it was the one expansion that they really could have leaned in on.
we get you. And I
mean, they kind of do it with, what is it? Warlords of Draenor, in a way. Like, you meet Thrall's dad, his mom, and Garrosh, like, his dad, like, Gul'dan. So it's like they lean into it, like, pretty much, like, pretty well. I think they could have done more with it, but, like, Shadowlands, man, they could have, man, it had so much potential, like, from a writer's perspective, to make characters actually, or the players really, really get into it with the lore, like, for characters they know about. I don't know, just, like, even Dragonflight's doing a pretty good job of it with, like, Chromie, Alexstrasza, Caligos.
I truly, from the bottom of my heart, hope the new direction WoW seems to be headed with Dragonflight is...
They have been so far, but it's like, man, you think about it, it's like if they had that same mentality in Shadowlands, what a good expansion that would have been. I don't mean like rating-wise, I don't really care, like, but lore-wise, it would have been one of the best expansions.
the start of something
But it made it the worst, which is a shame.
new for the game. Because it's so sad that a game that I played for 15 years couldn't find a way to connect with me as a player in a setting that very much...
What they could have done also with Shadowlands is have it where you meet players that you had killed in the past. Like, obviously, maybe not the exact ones, but like if you're on the Alliance, you would see Horde, like ghosts, being like, I was a champion, but you ended that hope for my people, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would have been pretty cool.
should have. Yet a game that I just started playing 2 years ago has managed to consistently and in unexpected ways do things that a lot of AAA game developers simply aren't willing to do. And so
A lot of Final Fantasy stories are also kind of isolated, or at least like the side stories, but they're really,
So
really
to
well
stick
done.
with the theme, I hope to see great things from both these games in the future, as we move into the next phase of their existence and beyond.
Definitely, like, that's... I think if you're into either game, you're going to want that. And even if you're not, like, each game will push the other one forward, I think. Like how Warcraft is finally changing its ways, and I think Final Fantasy is, like, a part of that reason. I mean, even look at the Dragon Riding from Guild Wars 2. Like, hopefully they start realizing they can do that with the other mounts. So,
And I hope you find the game for you. I hope you enjoy yourself.
I mean, you don't have to find the game only for you. You can just play both, right? It's not like it's exclusive. Once you, like, play one, you can't play the other. So, it's a good video, definitely. Like, I 100% agree with a lot of his points. Some of them I think may have been more personal for himself, like the whole fighting against suppression being the main reason why people like it. Don't agree. I think the fan service was 100% the main reason. The way the final boss, like, it almost makes it feel like Final Fantasy did a better job in making you care. But not true at all. I don't know if I care less about the Jailer or Endsinger. Like, I hate the well, it's more negative feelings towards the Jailer just because of how Shadowlands did the characters. So the jailer now has a more negative connotation to him in my mind. Well, the Endsinger obviously doesn't have that. So in a way, I care about the Endsinger more, but it's not like I care about them. Two things. So that's are they the same from Jesse Cox? I would say in a way, yes. But the overarching story was done way different, which is the main would be the main reason why a lot of people liked Final Fantasy XIV's ending versus WoW's Shadowlands ending.